Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dear students. Today's lesson is related to the age of Chaucer. The time period is from 1350 to 1400. In today's lesson, we are going to discuss a short literary background of the age, and we are going to study in detail about the famous medieval poets, including Geoffrey Chaucer, William Langland, and John Gower. Students, three important events took place during the age of Chaucer. First was Hundred Years' War between England and France. Its duration was from 1337 to 1453, and the cause behind it was English claims to the French throne. The second important event was Black Death or bubonic plague. This pestilence affected England so much, and it was the most fatal pandemic recorded in human history, as it caused the deaths of 75 to 200 million people. So this was one of the causes that shook literally the hinges of the whole England. And the third event was Peasants' Revolt, and it started in May 1381 and it came to an end in November 1381. This was the revolt when peasants rebelled against King Richard the Second, and they were angry about the king's policies regarding and they had issues such as low pay and the introduction of poll tax. uh, the demanded changes were made, but this revolt did not achieve all of the peasants' aims behind that. Famous poets of the age were Geoffrey Chaucer, William Langland, and John Gower. We are going to study about all of them in detail. First of all, Geoffrey Chaucer, who was so much important, whose work was so much significant that the whole age was named after him. He was born in the early 1340s and died in 1400. He marks a brilliant culmination of Middle English literature. His first narrative poem was The Book of the Duchess, and this was in Dream Allegory Convention. He wrote it in the end of 1369, and here Chaucer made use of octosyllabic couplets. The next one was The House of Fame, and here the versification was with more sureness and flexibility. The next one was The Parliament of Fowls. Here Chaucer used a seven-line stanza rhyming ABA, and this was known as rhyme royal. Chaucer handles this with a poise and a liquid flow of language that is something new in Middle English. The next one was Troilus and Cressida. This he wrote in the middle of 1380s, and this was the major work in which the full genius of Chaucer as metrical technician, as storyteller, and as student of human character is triumphantly displayed. The next one was The Legend of Good Women, and then the most important work produced by Chaucer was the Canterbury Tales. But unfortunately, Chaucer could not complete this work as he died in 1400. But even then, this was the most important work, and it's the part of the tradition of English literature. There were three distinct periods of Chaucer's literary career. First one was French period. It started in 1359 and lasted till 1372. The next one was Italian period, as Chaucer was in the court and he was sent on different diplomatic missions to different countries. When he was sent to Italy, then he was impressed by, influenced by Italian people, Italian literature, and the poetry produced by him was affected by that influence, and the time period of this was from 1372 to 1386. And then the last period was the English period, or the period of Chaucer's maturity, and this was from 1387 to 1400. Means the poems produced by Chaucer during this time were written in English. The Canterbury Tales was the most important work, the most important creation, which brings the whole Middle Ages to life. Means we come to know so much about the Middle Ages from this one poem written by Geoffrey Chaucer. It was written in the form of heroic couplets. There were the plan of the Canterbury Tales was that there were 29 pilgrims who were supposed to assemble at Tabardin in Southwark with the intention of undertaking a pilgrimage to the shrine of Saint Thomas a Becket at Canterbury. Each of them was to tell four stories. Actually, the poem contains only 23 stories because Chaucer could write only 23 stories when he died. And there were original plan was that there were to be four stories to be told by each of the 31 pilgrims, including the poet and the host of the inn. The more interesting and significant than the tales themselves was the general prologue. And if we look at general prologue, it seems as if that we are looking at the whole portrait gallery of the 14th century society, because there is so much variety. Chaucer presents the characters belonging to different strata of society and different classes of society. So we get to know about the whole picture of 14th century society in general prologue. A prologue to the Canterbury Tales can be looked upon as one of the richest portrait galleries in English literature, because when we notice the description of the pilgrims belonging to different classes of society, the whole panorama of 14th century society comes before us. The Canterbury Tales reflect accurately a great change taking place in the life of English countryside, and in spite of the difficulty of language and pronunciation, Chaucer's work is a part of the living tradition of English literature. Emily Legwis, an eminent critic, appreciates Chaucer in these words. Ridding himself entirely of the allegory and the dream, he looked face to face at the spectacle of men and set himself to reproduce it directly. So, in Canterbury Tales and in the prologue to the Canterbury Tales, we notice that it is a realistic reproduction, or it is the a realistic creation of the people of 14th century society. Now, students, the age of Chaucer was very different from Anglo-Saxon age. If we look at the poetry produced in this age, we notice that the Old English hero has now become the man of love, of romance, a man interested in collecting money, a man interested in improving his own personal status rather than sacrificing himself for the society. So, the idea of each man for himself comes to the front when we notice the depiction of different characters in the prologue to the Canterbury Tales and in the Canterbury Tales. The old values and themes of religious idealism and heroism are replaced by human ambition and desire. पहले बात होती थी रिलीजियस आइडियलिज्म की और हीरोइज्म की, लेकिन अब उसकी जगह ह्यूमन एम्बिशन और डिज़ायर ने ले ली थी. Women began to appear more and more in poetry, first as objects of desire, but later as strong characters. For example, none in Chaucer's prologue and Chaucer's Canterbury Tales was a strong character. There had always been a European influence on English literature, but now England seems to try to shape its own identity. This was a very prominent feature of the Middle English age. Nun's character, as I told you before, also shows how people are hypocrite, that they pretend to be something, but in reality they are the other. So, in Canterbury Tales, we notice the depiction of the follies of the age as well, and follies of the individual characters. But this nun also shows strength in character, that she challenges the church by breaking some of the rules. Literature is a great help here in this sense that we noticed that a sense of national identity was being made, and the greatest national myth of those that age is the story of King Arthur and the Knights of Round Table. Themes showed a rapidly changing society, and English was developing as a language and a culture. So these were all the main characteristics of Middle English age. Students, Chaucer's contribution to English literature had a peculiar quality. He wrote at a time when the old forms and traditions in English literature had reached a decline. जिस वक्त में वो लिख रहा था तो ओल्ड फॉर्म्स और ट्रेडिशंस जवाल पजीर थे एंड द डायलेक्ट ऑफ लंडन वॉज इमर्जिंग एज अ लैंग्वेज विच वॉज यंग फ्रेश एंड फुल ऑफ लाइफ. It was left to Chaucer to skillfully blend the old and the new, so that his work not only presents the summit of the medieval genius, but also foreshadows some of the typical aspects of the Renaissance literature which was around the corner. चौसर की लैंग्वेज जो उसने अपनी पोइट्री में यूज़ की उसके अंदर हमें एक ज़बरदस्त सा ब्लेंड नज़र आता है ओल्ड और न्यू का. मिडीवल जीनियस की कल्मिनेशन भी उसमें नज़र आती है और साथ साथ रेनेसां लिटरेचर दैट वाज अबाउट टू टेक प्लेस उसकी भी फोर शेडोइंग हमें चौसर के काम में नज़र आती है. एक क्रिटिक चौसर के बारे में कहते हैं, इन चौसर्स हैंड्स इंग्लिश वर्ड्स फ्रोजन बाय अ लॉन्ग विंटर ऑफ वेटिंग फर्स्ट गेव फोर्थ देयर फ्रेगरेंस. यानी वो इंग्लिश वर्ड्स जो शायद फ्रोज़न थे और जिनको अभी इतनी खूबसूरती से किसी ने इस्तेमाल नहीं किया था, चौसर की पोइट्री के अंदर पहली दफ़ा उन वर्ड्स की फ्रेगरेंस रीडर्स को फील हुई. सो दिस वॉज चौसर्स पेक्यूलियर क्वालिटी. William Langland was born in 1332. Place of birth is Shropshire. He was educated at Melbourne. He was a financially poor person but very intelligent one. He had the stuff of a reformer in him. So he never rose in the church and he was physically lean and tall, and he was more keen to note the ironies of life, the suffering and misery that lay about him. There was only one solace in his life, and that was his long poem uh, entitled as The Book of Piers the Plowman. And this was the book into which he poured his lifeblood, all his hopes and despairs, sorrows and aspirations, anger and compassion. They went into the making of this poem that is entitled as The Book of Piers the Plowman. This poem is extant or available in various forms. For example, text A, text B, text C. Text A was produced in 1362 and it contained the vision about Piers the Plowman with prologue and 8 cantos, plus the vision of do well, do do best in a prologue and 3 cantos. Text B was written in 1377 in London and it was longer in length than the previous one. It contained the fable of the rats and the cat. Text C was the longest of all and the latest in date. इस पोएम के कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स की बात करें तो इट शोज़ अ पिक्चर ऑफ contemporary life and manners in town as well as in country. This poem can also be taken as a satire upon ecclesiastical abuses, means the corruption that was present in the church. And besides that, it also describes the follies and vices of the age. And this poem was an allegory of life. The poet dreams of the world as a field full of folk. The field is situated between the Tower of Truth, uh, that's God the Father, and the dungeon, the abode of evil spirits. Clerical characters predominate, and for none of them has Langland a good word save the plowmen and the hermits. First canto deals with the vision of the Holy Church. A lovely lady approaches the dreamer and tells him that the tower is the abode of the Creator, means God, while the dungeon belongs to the father of falseness. Her name means the name of the lady she discloses as Holy Church, and in the course of a good, vigorous homily, she instructs him upon the value of truth and love to mortal men who wish to go to heaven. She that homily goes as, "Give of your goods, and to you shall be given. 'Tis the lock gate of love that letteth out grace, to comfort the careworn encumbered with sin. When all the treasures are tried, then truth is the best. I have told thee what truth is. No treasure is better." So we can notice that through this poem, William Langland was trying to reform the society and was trying to teach them the value of truth and the value of moral uprightness. Canto 5 of the poem deals with the vision of seven deadly sins and of Piers the Plowman. Once more, we are in the field where reason is exhorting the people. Reason is a character here, and reason is exhorting the people upon becoming morally strong. He was basically delivering a sermon, and this sermon impresses the hearers. So, pride is among the hearers, and pride is a character, and he was humility after listening to that sermon. Then, luxury pledges himself to drink water. Envy, wrath, avarice, gluttony, and sloth also repent. So, these seven deadly sins, after hearing the sermon or the lecture delivered by reason about moral uprightness, they start repenting, they start regretting, and Piers the Plowman offers to help them in the quest for truth. In the course of this canto, the poet gives a vivid sketch of a London alehouse and its occupants where gluttony has gone. It's one of the social pictures which give the poem its historical interest. जब इस poem के अंदर या poem के इस part में लंदन एल हाउस की डिपिक्शन इतनी डिटेल में दी गई है, तो इससे हमें पता चलता है कि ये जो सोशल पिक्चर यहाँ पे प्रोवाइड की गई है, ये पोएम के हिस्टोरिकल एलिमेंट को इंक्रीज करती है, एंड इट इंक्रीजेज हिस्टोरिकल इंटरेस्ट इन द पोएम. In Canto 6, Pierce advocates hard manual work for which many are disinclined. Hard manual work करने की तरफ ज़्यादातर लोग अपना inclination नहीं show करते. They don't like doing manual work. But if one is not inclined towards manual work, then the result may be failure or hunger. सो इस पोएम में ये दिखाया गया कि जब लोग हार्ड मैनुअल लेबर या वर्क की तरफ नहीं जाते, तो हंगर उसका नतीजा होता है, और हंगर हाउएवर मेक्स देम सबमिट. हंगर फिर उनसे वो काम करवाता है. देन फॉलो सम पैसेजेस इन विच ही स्पीक्स ऑफ द फूड ऑफ द पुअर एंड ऑफ देयर जनरल कंडीशंस. उसके बाद के पैसेजेस में जो स्पीकर है वो हमें फूड ऑफ द पुअर के बारे में और दूसरी जनरल कंडीशंस के बारे में बताता है. तो इस पूरी पोएम को पढ़ के हमें ये रीडर्स ये बात क्लियरली अंडरस्टैंड कर लेते हैं कि पोइट की इंटेंशन ये है to point out or to expose the follies of the people, vices of the people, and to reform them. Students, let's discuss the overall style of the poem, The Book of Piers the Plowman. Langland's work exhibits sincerity, dignity, and passion. However, unlike Chaucer, he was not an artist, and he did not have Chaucer's ability of visualizing characters. In his poetry, the bad characters are more vitally and attentively drawn than the good ones. A comparison of Lady Mead with the Holy Church convinces the readers of this point. So this was a weakness of his poem. चौसर के साथ उसे कंपेयर करें तो चौसर जितनी आर्टिस्टिक क्वालिटी भी उसकी लैंगलैंड की पोइट्री में नहीं है, और चौसर की तरह की जो एबिलिटी ऑफ विजुअलाइजिंग कैरेक्टर्स है वो भी लैंगलैंड में नहीं थी. बहरहाल लैंगलैंड ने इस पोएम के अंदर जो भी एफर्ट की है ऑफ प्रेजेंटिंग द सोसाइटी अकॉर्डिंग टू हिज एबिलिटी, दैट वाज आल्सो परफेक्ट. He had remarkable power of observation, but like Wordsworth, will follow up lines of elemental beauty with verse of the most dullest or trivial kind. वर्स वर्स को अगर देखा जाए तो वो डलेस्ट और ट्रिवियल काइंड की वर्स इसने यूज़ की है, जबकि कंटेंट जो है दैट इज़ रिमार्केबल. बट ही हैड एन अरेस्टिंग पर्सनालिटी कंपेयर्ड विद चॉसर. वी रियलाइज इज मैनीफोल्ड लिमिटेशंस. अगर हम चॉसर के साथ कंपेयर करें लैंगलैंड को, फिर तो हमें इसकी लिमिटेशंस नज़र आती हैं, बट कंपेयर्ड विद हिज प्रीडिसेसर्स. लेकिन अगर उसको उससे पहले आने वाले पोइट्स से कंपेयर किया जाए तो ही इज़ अमंग द रिलीजियस पोइट्स ऑफ मेडिवल इंग्लैंड अ वेरिटेबल जाइंट. तो वो मेडिवल इंग्लैंड के दूसरे रिलीजियस पोइट्स के मुकाबले में एक जाइंट था. यानी ही वाज फार फार बेटर देन द अदर रिलीजियस पोइट्स ऑफ मेडिवल इंग्लैंड, बट एज कंपेयर टू चॉसर he had some limitations. David Dacies appreciates William Langland in these words, that I quote: Piers Plowman is the work of a religious idealist. यानी पियर्स प्लोमैन एक रिलीजियस आइडियलिस्ट का प्रोड्यूस हुआ हुआ वर्क है, लिखी हुई पोएम है. हु इज़ जेन्युइनली डिस्ट्रेस्ड बाय द सोशल एंड मॉरल कंडीशंस ऑफ इंग्लैंड. जिसकी पोएम को पढ़ के पता चलता है कि पोइट डिस्ट्रेस्ड है सही मानों में डिस्ट्रेस्ड है इंग्लैंड की सोशल और मॉरल कंडीशंस को देखकर, एंड हु इज़ एंडेवरिंग टू क्रिएट अ लार्ज एंड क्यूमुलेटिव विजन ऑफ व्हाट इज़ रॉन्ग एंड वेयर वी मस्ट लुक फॉर इम्प्रूवमेंट। और जो ये कोशिश कर रहा है कि जो भी कुछ गलत है उसका एक कंप्लीट विजन और एक लार्ज पिक्चर रीडर्स के सामने प्रेजेंट करे, ताकि रीडर्स देख सकें कि कहाँ इम्प्रूवमेंट की गुंजाइश है। So, this is a very apt remark about William Langland. The third important medieval poet is John Gower. He was born during the earlier years of the 14th century, and he seems to be a person of shrewd business instincts with a large amount of landed property. He was a landowner, so a wealthy person. He was in communication with a number of merchants, so it was assumed that he made his money as a merchant. क्योंकि उसके merchants के साथ different connections थे, सो ये सोचा जाता था कि उसने एज अ मर्चेंट भी अपना जो अपनी वेल्थ थी वो अर्न की। ही रिमेन्स कंसर्न एंटायरली विद द मैनेजमेंट ऑफ हिज estates एंड द राइटिंग ऑफ बुक्स फॉर क्वाइट अ लॉन्ग टाइम। काफ़ी लंबे अरसे तक उसने अपनी अपनी लैंड को जो लैंडेड प्रॉपर्टी है उसको भी मैनेज किया, और उसके साथ साथ बुक्स की राइटिंग का काम भी जारी रखा। हिज सिंपथीज वर अरिस्टोक्रेटिक एंड कंजर्वेटिव एंड द peasants revolt horrified him exceedingly. Obviously, he himself was a landowner, that is why peasants' revolt was obviously against the landowners and the elite class, so he was naturally horrified by the peasants' revolt. If we talk about Gower's chief works, the first one is Speculum Meditantis. This poem was written in French language, and it contains some 30,000 lines. The subject matter includes questioning about the nature of morality, vices and virtues are classified, and a picture of society is drawn. For its improvement, Gower looks to the intervention of the Blessed Virgin. गोवर का ये मानना है कि सोसाइटी की इम्प्रूवमेंट तभी हो सकती है अगर ब्लेसेड वर्जिन की टीचिंग्स को ओबे किया जाए. Historically, the work is of small value, but as in Langland and Chaucer, there are interesting sidelights on the city life. Vox Clementis is a work produced by Gower, and this was written in Latin language. It was occasioned by the rising of 1381. It consists of 7 books. The first book describes wilderness in which the medieval Baptist cries. In later books, he presents common people as having lost their reason and being transformed into wild beasts. Throughout the book, theology and politics are intermingled. The later books dealing with man's responsibility towards man. He criticizes the clergy as freely as Langland does. हम देखते हैं कि लैंगलैंड के वर्क में भी चर्च के ऑफिशल्स को क्रिटिसाइज़ किया गया, और यहाँ पे गोवर ने भी अपने इस लैटिन लैंग्वेज में प्रोड्यूस किए गए वर्क में क्लर्जी मैन को चर्च ऑफिशल्स को क्रिटिसाइज़ किया. And this was a significant testimony to the corruption of the medieval church. In poets के works को पढ़कर पता चलता है कि how much corruption was there in church during the medieval age. Gower distrusts the people yet claims to speak for them. He believes in an aristocratic government and strongly disapproves of the indecisiveness of Richard II. So Richard II was a ruler with whom the public was dissatisfied, and so many poets have expressed this thing in their poetry as well. The third important work produced by John Gower was entitled as Confessio Amantis. This poem was completed in 1390, and it had some 33,000 lines. It was written in the days when John Gower believed in Richard II, but later on he substitutes the name of Henry IV for Richard II. And this poem included a number of short stories with the definite intention of telling the people exactly what are the rudiments of good morality. So this poem also had a moral purpose. Students, as this one is the concluding lecture on Middle English literature, so I'm going to discuss some other important texts belonging to that age. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight was one of them. This was the major text of Middle English age. It's very important and it consists of 2500 lines. Author of this poem is anonymous. and the word Sir means he was means Sir Gawain was a knight, and it is also generally thought that he is one of the knights of the Round Table. When we hear the word knight, we remember Beowulf, and thus the fact that a knight is supposed to be a hero, an honorable man, brave, honest, sincere, selfless, sacrificing. This was the main idea behind King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. However, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight uses irony to criticize the old values of heroism, because unlike Beowulf, Sir Gawain is not a genuine hero, but it is a fake hero and an anti-hero. So probably for the first time, the concept of anti-hero was used in this text of the Middle Age, and it reveals how the people of those times thought ahead of their time. This person, Sir Gawain, does not do any heroic things. So it means the society was changing, the values were changing, people started to use deceitful ways to achieve the desired aims, and rapidly changing society is reflected through the portrayal of a false knight in this poem. Students, medieval drama was another major development in Middle English literature. It was a highly biblical drama. This drama showed scenes from the Bible, and it was produced in Latin language. They used to take the story of some saint or a prophet or another religious figure from the Bible and performed either in the church or around the church. As it was a drama, it was easier to understand as drama was supposed to be performed or acted on the stage. So it was easier for people to understand that. It was called mystery drama or miracle drama. Miracle drama means miraculous, mysterious events taken from the Bible. And the purpose behind presenting this drama was to teach moral values to masses. Students, it could be an act of literary expression, but the main object behind that was the church aiming to educate, to teach people the Christian values. So, the primary aim behind presenting the medieval drama, mystery plays, or miracle plays was to teach the moral values, Christian values to people. Thus, church was also the part of the development of the play. Students, the invention of the printing press in Germany was the most important event to literary production. The printing press opened the door for mass printing of books, and it made literature accessible. The first book to be printed was Bible. In 1470s, William Caxton brought the printing press to England. It was invented by Gutenberg, but William Caxton was the person who brought the printing press to England. The first literary work to be printed was King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, and the story of King Arthur reached many readers in published form, and thus it became a part of English national consciousness. John Skelton is one of the late Middle English poets. He was born in 1463 and died in 1529. He was a tutor to Henry VIII of England. He is an individual poet who wrote in short lines of poetry about drinking, pets, and low life. Students, that before him, the subject matter of the poems was related to the elite class members, the authoritative figures, kings, etc. But in the Middle English, a common man started to appear in the poems. For John Skelton, poetry is for all, about everything, not just about battles, kings, heroes, etc. This person, John Skelton, uses humor and a unique poetic style. He shows a perfect example of a strong sense of English identity in literature, in language, in thinking. England was trying to free itself from the influences of European countries. Philip Sparrow is an interesting short poem written by John Skelton. Let's read the text of the poem. Vengeance, I ask and cry, by way of exclamation, on the whole nation of cats wild and tame. God, send them sorrow and shame. So, students, apparently it seems to be a text written for children. because here we notice that someone is complaining about cats, and speaker of the poem is not a hero, but a pet bird, and he's talking about all cats, wild as well as tame, and he is asking for revenge. And then we notice that at the end of the poem there is prayer to God, and apparently on the surface it seems a very funny text. For so many people of that time, poetry meant to be only for the high class, the educated ones, the kings, queens. So the themes were supposed to be very serious. But this text seems to be a funny one on the surface. But of course, on if we uh, contemplate, if we ponder over it, we may notice the hidden meaning, the implied meaning of the poem, and that's very important. Some very important points become evident from this poem that by this time, other themes started to appear in literature. This is a text written for the children, and it challenges the idea that the poetry should only be serious and meant to be written for particular class. This poem shows that poetry is for everyone, and it could be anything. This poem is a symbolic poem. The bird here may be a symbol of an ordinary person, a poor person, complaining about the rich people, the authoritative figures, the king, the church, government, etc. And because there is a political message, so perhaps to avoid punishment, we notice a concealed message over here, and the poet wants this poem to be published, and because there is criticism of the government, so he uses this form. Students, I hope you have understood today's lesson. Wish you all the best. Allah Hafiz.